Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. The spring morning in Springfield began, as always, calmly. Ron Henderson, a powerfully built 58-year-old man, was sitting at the kitchen table, leafing through the local newspaper and thinking about how it would be a warm day. Apple trees were blooming outside the window, and on the windowsill was his favorite cup with the inscription, "Life is good if you have coffee and knees that don't creak." He took a sip from his cup and looked at his watch, 7:14. Somewhere behind the wall, a rustling sound could be heard. His wife, Patty, was getting ready for work. Ron found himself increasingly feeling strangely distant. Many years of living together, it seemed that they already knew each other by heart, and now something has shifted. Some kind of minor anxiety, an annoying lump in my chest. "Ron," Patty called from the hallway, "do you need to go to the post office today? Pick up a package that is always late?" "Yes," he responded, smiling slightly. "I think I'll stop by after lunch." He placed the cup on the table and sighed quietly. For some time now, only one thing pleased him. The children had grown up, they had their own lives, and it seemed that old age should be a golden time. But the feeling of something wrong did not go away. Around 7:40 a.m., Patty walked past him, hurriedly picked up his car keys, and said, "Shall I drop you off in your car at the workshop? You left it for maintenance yesterday." Ron nodded. "Thank you, Pat. How's your back? Still aching?" She shrugged her shoulders vaguely. "Yes, that's it. It's nothing," and looked away. Ron noticed that his wife looked a little worried. The makeup is a little brighter than usual. The eyes sparkle differently. "Perhaps you should pay more attention to yourself," he thought. After all, she's 56 and she wants to look younger. But some inner feeling suggested that it was not just about makeup. 5 minutes later, they were already sitting in her Toyota. Patty turned on the music's soft jazz. Ron usually enjoyed these quiet morning drives, but now he found himself thinking, what the hell is going on? He noticed Patty sneakily checking her phone while they were at a traffic light. During the day, Ron managed to pick up the car from the workshop, stopped at the post office, and almost had an argument with an employee who did not have the necessary documents. I felt tired and decided to return home a little early, make myself lunch, and rest peacefully. As I pulled up to the house, I saw Patty's car already in the driveway. "I came back early," he was surprised. Entering the house, I heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom. "Came home to take a shower," a thought flashed. Maybe he doesn't feel well. He put the bag of groceries on the kitchen table and wanted to call her, but froze. Patty's laughter and someone's voice came from the half-open bathroom door. Or rather, no, not the voice of a stranger, but her own, but as if she was talking on the phone. Curiosity prevailed. He came closer. I didn't knock loudly. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. And then I heard. Yes, he didn't suspect anything again. I don't know. Maybe I'll have dinner with him and then come to you. After a short pause, she laughed. "Don't call him that, Brent. He's nice." "Well, yes, old fart is your favorite expression, but you know I don't like it. Just, okay, we'll talk later. Kisses, bye." Ron felt his heart skip a beat. A hot wave ached at my temple. "Old fart," repeated in his head, "and the name is Brent. Young lover? What the hell?" Silence washed over him like a wave of disappointment. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to figure out if he had made a mistake. But everything was obvious. The water in the room died down, and the wife could be heard drying herself with a towel. Ron moved away so she wouldn't notice him eavesdropping. "Calm down," he ordered himself. He is an engineer. He is used to thinking things through and not exploding without evidence. Does he have proof? He can't say, "I heard you call me an old fart." It wasn't her, but Brent and her laughter. It all sounded disgusting. Ron went out into the yard to catch his breath. So what next? Should I talk? create a scandal. He remembered his classic wisdom. First, you need to turn off the tap so that there is no flood. Then figure it out. By faucet, he understood her lie. We need to collect the facts, make sure that this is not just a stupid scene. This is not her first conversation. Surely everything is more serious than it seems, he realized bitterly. When Patty came out of the bathroom, she found her husband in the yard. He sat in the shadows, looking somewhere into the distance. "Hi," she said, trying to smile. "You came back early. Did you receive everything in the mail?" "Yeah," he answered briefly, without looking her in the eyes. "Are you all right? You're kind of—" Patty narrowed her eyes, closed. "Everything is fine, just tired." He tried to sound even. "Maybe you should take a nap." "Yes, possible." They exchanged a few stock phrases. Patty seemed to be looking at him carefully, as if she wanted to ask something. But she didn't. She went to the kitchen to make coffee. If she senses my tension, she's trying to act normal, Ron thought, noticing that she still smelled of the light floral perfume he once gave her. He felt disgusted. What if she wore this scent for him too? They spent the evening without much conversation. He turned on the TV, listened to the news, but realized that he was absolutely not understanding the meaning. Patty had dinner in her room, allegedly watching a video on her tablet. There had been no closeness for almost 6 months, but now the alienation was felt especially acutely. The next day, Ron decided to take a break and called his eldest daughter, Kristen, who lived in St. Louis. She was a lawyer, and lately she was always busy. Ron started the usual conversation about the weather and how it was doing. "Dad, are you and Mom okay there?" Kristen suddenly asked. She sounded strange on the phone yesterday. "What did she say?" Ron tensed. "Yes, that's the point. It's nothing. She just said that she was busy and we'd talk later, although she usually asks about my work, about life." Ron realized that his wife did not want to communicate with her daughter for a long time, probably so as not to give away her mood. "We're fine," he lied. "Maybe she's tired." "Dad, if something is wrong, you can always tell me," Kristen said softly. He didn't want to involve his daughter in his suspicions, so I made the excuse, "Everything is fine," and hurried to end the call. That afternoon, Ron met up with a friend named Harry, a neighbor with whom he went bowling from time to time. Having ordered a glass of beer in a small bar, Ron suddenly felt like he wanted to speak out. "Listen, Harry," he began hesitantly, "do you think it's possible that after 30 years of marriage, a wife will suddenly find someone on the side?" Harry, heavy-set and good-natured, looked over his glasses. "Yes, everything is possible, old man." And suddenly, he became serious. "Do you have problems?" Ron hesitated, not daring to reveal details. "I don't know yet. I just smell something wrong. If a sense of smell speaks, it's usually for a reason. Haven't you talked to her?" "Not yet." "Maybe you can hire a detective," Harry said half-jokingly. "I know a former cop, by the way." Ron suddenly perked up. "Is it true? Give me your contact. It might come in handy." Harry shrugged. "Are you crazy, or what? But if you decide, I can send you the number." "What's his name?" "Craven. Gene Craven. He used to work in the police, then he left, and now he hangs the tales of unfaithful husbands and wives. A normal guy, no show-off." Ron took a long sip of his beer. He didn't think that he would really decide to do this, but something inside told him, "Close the tap. Facts first." Returning home, Ron found Patty in the kitchen. She was cooking something, muttering to herself. When she saw her husband, she perked up, almost dropping the bag of spices. "Oh, you scared me," she said with a smile, but somehow forced. "Sorry," he replied. I sat down at the table. "We haven't had a normal dinner together for a long time." She turned to him. "Maybe you can sit down. I'll cook the pasta." "Fine." He watched her pour water into the pan, and suddenly he asked a question. "Pat, are you okay? You've been kind of agitated the last few days." She froze for a second, but quickly pulled herself together. "Yes, everything seems fine. Just tired from work." "Right?" "Certainly. He didn't press. He understood that she was lying now, but without aggression. I'm just tired. Apparently, this is how she justifies everything. We sat in silence, listening to the water boil. His wife cast wary glances at him from time to time. Maybe you need to relax too, Ron, she suggested. Shall we go somewhere for the weekend? To the Lake of the Ozarks? He winced, remembering how they used to love these short outings into nature, but now the thought of relaxing with her seemed unnatural. We'll see, he said vaguely. It was already late at night, and Ron lay awake. I heard Patty rustling on the phone. Maybe he is corresponding with that same Brent. My heart sank with jealousy and resentment. Suddenly, I remembered my youth, how he looked after her, how he admired her smile. Is it really all going to waste in one call? He thought bitterly. But then he answered himself, not in one call. Apparently, this has been going on for a long time. I just didn't notice. Ron quietly stood up, went out onto the porch, and sat down in a wicker chair. The night was quiet. The stars were shining brightly. He blew on the cup of hot tea he had brought with him. If she's really cheating, is it really over for us? An inner voice said, gather evidence, understand what's going on, and then decide. He took out his phone, opened a new contact card, and added a name, Gene Craven. The decision was made. A couple of days later, Ron called the number Harry had sent him. A hoarse male voice was heard at the other end of the line. Craven, I'm listening. Good afternoon. My name is Ron Henderson. I was given your contact. Ron hesitated. They said you can help. Is your wife cheating or something worse? Craven asked bluntly. Ron was a little taken aback by this straightforward or something worse, but he took a deep breath. It seems that the wife. I want to clarify. We need to collect evidence. Craven coughed. Clear. My rate is $500 a day plus expenses. If you need a dossier of all contacts and photos, that's separate. How much do you need? Ron fiddled with his pen nervously. I need to understand everything, to have good grounds for. Divorce, and names, facts, photos. Understood. So, we'll keep an eye on it. Send a photo of your wife, her daily routine, and so on. I'll do everything. They agreed to meet in person the next day at the small green leaf cafe outside the city. When Ron hung up, his hands were shaking. God, what have I come to? I'm hiring a detective to keep an eye on my own wife. But at the same time, a cold calm settled inside. What should I do? I won't let myself be made a fool. The Greenleaf Cafe was located near the highway, where truckers and tourists usually stopped. Ron saw a strong man, about 50 years old, with gray hair starting to wearing a leather jacket. There was already a cup of coffee at the table. Are you Ron? The man asked and nodded towards the chair. Gene Craven, nice to meet you. Ron sat down and ordered himself a coffee. The waitress came up and smiled at them. Will you have something to eat? Maybe a sandwich? I'll just have coffee, Ron replied, feeling his stomach tighten. When the waitress left, Craven immediately got down to business. A few words about my wife. Her name, where she works, what time she usually leaves, returns, hobbies, girlfriends, car make, number. Her routine is needed to determine where she can meet her lover. Ron opened his notebook. Patricia Henderson, 56, accountant at Bright Smile Dental Clinic. She leaves around 7:30, returns by 5 o'clock. Sometimes she says she's late. This didn't happen before. The car is a white Toyota Camry. I added the number here. Craven listened attentively, nodded, and asked clarifying questions. Then he said, another photo, so that my assistant will immediately recognize her if I have to work in a team. Ron pulled out a family photo from his wallet, some holiday with the kids. Patty looks happy and hugs him. Craven glanced. Normal. Let's load it into the database. Term. He looked up at Ron. It usually takes several days to track a couple of meetings, sometimes weeks. I warn you right away. We will monitor discreetly, but no one gives a 100% guarantee. I understand, Ron replied quietly. I have money. Can you do it in a week? More likely, but it happens that you have to wait. Okay, if she regularly meets with the same lover, 3 or 4 days will be enough. Ron took a sip of his coffee, tasting the bitterness on his tongue. He suddenly imagined a detective photographing Patty with some young guy, recording their kisses and hugs. He shuddered. Is she really doing this? Are you sure you want to know the truth? Craven asked unexpectedly. Often people in your situation are afraid to face reality. Ron froze for a moment, then nodded. Want, I can't live a lie. Okay? Craven handed him a business card. Call at any time. I'll keep you posted. First report in 3 days. They stood up and shook hands. Ron noticed that the detective's handshake was firm, cold, professional. I drove home with a heavy heart, but with a firm determination. I won't break, I must know the truth. 3 days have passed. Ron tried to act normal. In the morning, I drank coffee with my wife and briefly discussed the news. Patty behaved evenly, although sometimes she lost her temper over little things. During this time, he received only one SMS from Craven. Managed to record something. We need a couple more days. That same evening, when Patty said she was leaving for the clinic to finalize reports, Ron knew that this delay was unlikely to be related to actual work. I asked, maybe I should take you. It's already dark. No, no, she waved it off sharply. I'm in my car, it's not far away. He nodded. Go ahead, kid, and have Craven write down where you're really going, Ron thought sarcastically. The pain inside still burned, but he tried to control himself. The next day, Ron stopped at a small shopping center to buy a new shirt. He suddenly caught himself thinking that he wanted to look better. Old fart sounded in my head over and over again. He wasn't going to be what this Brant guy thought he was. When Ron left the store, he came face to face with Mia Sanders, a young woman who owned a yoga studio, whom he knew casually from events around town. She was 34, reddish hair, a sincere smile. "Oh, Mr. Henderson," she exclaimed. "What a meeting!" "Hello, Mia," he replied with slight embarrassment. "How is life? You haven't been to the studio for months." Ron smiled guiltily. "Yes, somehow not before. You know, the years go by, my back is no longer the same. Yoga is the best way to maintain health," she winked. "You remember, right?" Ron always enjoyed talking to her, although he felt a little old next to this energetic girl. But now, after everything that was happening, he suddenly felt a special warmth in her gaze. "Maybe I'll stop by sometime," he said evasively. They exchanged a few more words, then Mia, a little embarrassed, added, "You know, if you just need to relax or get a massage, I'm happy to help at any time." He felt something move inside him. For so many years of marriage to Patty, he had not allowed himself even a hint of interest in other women. But now everything was different. "Thank you, Mia," he said softly. "Maybe I'll actually sign up." A couple of days later, he decided to go to a yoga studio, at least for an hour. Arriving there, I saw that Mia was teaching a small class herself. A couple of women, one man. Ron sat down on the mat in the corner and tried to repeat the exercises. Of course, his body hurt, but he stubbornly tried. After the lesson, Mia came up. "How do you feel?" "It's like I'm an old rusty robot," he honestly admitted, wiping off his sweat. "But strangely enough, I felt better inside." She laughed, not mockingly, but with warmth. "Do you see? Sometimes it's enough to take the first step." Ron smiled. No one had given him such friendliness for a long time. Mia showed him a couple of exercises to relax his lower back. Her voice sounded encouraging. "I thought yoga wasn't very effective at my age," he muttered. "Not at all," Mia objected. "Your age is a new chapter, if you like." He heard sincerity in her words, and admitting to himself, he suddenly felt a slight spark of sympathy. "Just don't try to get into trouble," he rebuked himself. "You're still married, even if she—" But when he looked up at Mia, he saw her warm smile and realized that perhaps there was something real here. At home, he tried to behave as usual, but Patty noticed his unusually good mood. "What's new with you?" she asked one evening. "Nothing special. I took up yoga," he answered. "Yoga?" Patty raised an eyebrow. "You couldn't stand it." "People change," he said shortly. She looked him up and down and did not pursue the topic. Apparently, she had her own concerns. Ron noticed that she was late at work for the second time in a week. Okay, he thought, let the detective do his job. He felt a strange relief that at least something in his life was changing for the better. Communication with Mia gave him the feeling that he was not an old fart, but a man in the prime of life's wisdom. Early the next week, Ron received a call from Jean Craven. The voice was businesslike. "Your suspicions have been confirmed, Mr. Henderson. I have photos and several videos of Patty dating a younger man." Ron's heart sank as if he had been hit in the solar plexus. Although he was expecting this, something still collapsed inside. "Can you tell me the details?" he asked hoarsely. They mostly meet at the Sunset Inn on the outskirts of town. Patty stops by after work or lies about staying at the office late. He is Brent Masters, 32 years old, does not officially work anywhere, and lives in a rented apartment. Craven paused. She drives him around in her car for a while. "Got it," Ron said with difficulty. "Do you have photos and videos?" "Yes, everything is on a flash drive. We can meet, I'll tell you. I'm not done yet, but there's enough material for you to take action." "Fine. Where will we meet?" They agreed to meet tomorrow at the same Green Leaf Cafe. After the conversation, Ron sat in silence for a long time, feeling the air around him become thick. Now everything is certain. "Perhaps we should talk to her immediately," flashed through my head, but he immediately remembered that it would be better for a lawyer to sort everything out, and visits for the children needed to be arranged in advance. That evening, Patty returned around 8. Ron was sitting on the couch watching baseball. She entered the living room. "Hello. Today was a hard day at the clinic," she said, as if making excuses. Ron nodded, but didn't say anything. She sat down next to him. "How about we go out into the backyard and grill a steak?" He felt an unusual desire on her part to establish contact. Maybe a feeling of guilt, or did she notice that I had become cold? But he simply nodded. About 15 minutes later, they were standing at the grill. The sky was strewn with stars, and the air smelled of fried meat. Patty timidly touched his sleeve. "Ron, forgive me if I've been distant lately. He tensed, still holding the tongs to turn the steaks. "What are you talking about?" "About us. It seems like we haven't had a heart-to-heart talk for a long time. Maybe we should take a vacation. Go somewhere." Ron suppressed a bitter smile. "Do you think this will solve all the problems?" She turned away, closing her eyes. "I don't know. It just seems to me that we have grown apart." "Are you moving away?" exploded in his head. "Do you even realize how far you've come?" But he remained silent, only chuckled vaguely, and he realized that there was no longer the same love in his soul. It's as if the separation mechanism has already started inside. The next day, around noon, Ron met with Craven. The detective handed him an envelope and a flash drive. "Here are the main materials for a week of surveillance. I could go on, but I think you've had enough." "Thanks," Ron said dryly. "How much do I owe you?" "We agreed on 500 per day plus expenses. Here's the score." Craven laid out the piece of paper. "If you need a more detailed dossier on the guy, I can collect it, but it's still a couple of days." Ron nodded. "Do it. If he is a gigolo, I want to know how he divorced other women. I need this in case of divorce proceedings." "Understood. I'll have it in a couple of days." The detective stood up, preparing to leave. "I understand that this is not easy for you, but it is better to know the truth than to live in illusions." "Yeah," said Ron bitterly. When Craven left, Ron was left with the envelope in his hands. My heart was beating wildly. Now I'll open this and everything will collapse completely. But he understood that everything in him had already collapsed. Some part of his soul died the moment he heard, "Old fart." He slowly left the cafe, got into the car, and turned on the ignition. A sealed envelope lay before my eyes. Go to the lawyer's office, he said to himself, starting the engine. Yesterday, when Ron received the envelope and flash drive from the detective, it turned out to be the longest day for him in recent years. The night passed with virtually no sleep. He lay in bed, tossed and turned, looked at the ceiling and tried to calm the riot of thoughts. Despite the fact that he was already sure that his wife was cheating, seeing real evidence photographs, videos of Patty kissing some young man turned out to be much more painful than expected. In the morning, he got up earlier than usual. In the kitchen, clutching a cup of strong coffee, he sat at the table and remembered the harsh words that Detective Craven had said when handing over the evidence. Better the bitter truth than the sweet illusion. Now this bitter truth burned him from the inside. Photos flashed before his eyes, which he briefly glanced at late at night. Patty and this Brent Masters, 32 years old, an arrogant guy who should be going to nightclubs and not sleeping with married women, leaving the motel holding hands. In some photos near the sunset in motel, they are hugging as if they are not embarrassed by other people's views or their own infidelities. Ron felt a cold rage well up inside him, but as usual, he tried to control himself. Keeping your emotions under control is the key to acting wisely, he kept telling himself. Patty also woke up early, but avoided looking her husband in the eyes. Apparently, she felt the tension in the air or felt that she was lying. She quickly got ready, said, "I need to go to the clinic early, the reports are there," and left without waiting for an answer. Ron stood in the doorway, nodded automatically, looking after her car. He knew that she was unlikely to go to her lover so early, but he was no longer surprised. At 10 a.m., Ron was already standing in the austere office building where the office of lawyer Lauren Goodman was located. She specialized in family law and had a strong character. Harry, a neighbor who gave the detective contact, once said that Lauren was a shark in the world of divorces. And for Ron now, this was exactly what was needed. "Mr. Henderson." He heard a pleasant but cold female voice when he entered the reception room. A tall woman with short hair and a black pantsuit stood at the secretary's desk. "Lauren Goodman. Come in, please." Ron followed her into a small office where diplomas and awards hung on the walls. The lawyer sat down at the table and motioned for him to have a chair. "So," Lauren began, opening the folder, "you want to file for divorce, right?" "Right," said Ron, trying to keep his voice calm. "You have children. Adults?" "Yes. 2 daughters, 33 and 27 years old. Both live separately. The older one already has a husband, and the younger one is pregnant. That is, there is no question of custody." Lauren nodded. "So you don't share children? House, property, savings. All this needs to be registered. Is there a prenuptial agreement?" "No, we didn't have one." "It's clear. Then you will have to divide everything you have acquired together. But as I understand it, you have evidence of adultery." Ron sighed, nodded, and laid out an envelope with photographs, as well as a flash drive, on the table. "Everything is here. Detective footage, reports on where and when they met." The lawyer glanced through the photographs, and her face acquired a hard expression. "Wow, there are enough. Convincing shots here." She put the pictures aside. "In our state of Missouri, adultery itself does not always affect the division of property, but it can affect the position in court and the final negotiations about who gets what. Your wife is unlikely to want publicity." Ron nodded, feeling a nasty bitterness. He knew that in the modern legal field the very fact of treason does not always decide everything, but still the moral side of the issue is expensive. "I'm ready to give her a fair division," he said. "I don't want to turn this into a dirty war. But I don't want to leave her with key assets, considering that she betrayed me. We invested in the house together." "That's right." Lauren made notes. "We can offer her a plan. Either she leaves with a certain part of the property and the house remains with you, or if she starts to dispute, we have photographs confirming her guilt in the breakdown of the marriage." Ron smiled wryly. "She thought that I would be a blind fool all my life. No, now there will be no more blind loyalty." The lawyer seemed to shake her head approvingly. One more thing. You mentioned the guy, Brent Masters. Do you have a file on him? I mean, maybe he has criminal episodes, debts. All this can strengthen our position. The detective said that he would collect material about him in the coming days. I think it will become clear that he lives off married women. It will be possible to put pressure on her so that she agrees to the terms of the divorce. Great. This will greatly simplify things. Lauren signed the form. I'll start the registration. As soon as you are ready to give her the official papers, we will discuss this with you. The main thing is not to give yourself away prematurely if you want to maintain a strategic advantage. Ron nodded, inwardly agreeing. He did not at all intend to make a huge scandal, but wanted the most calm but firm departure. And yet the bitterness did not go away. Already in the car, Ron received a text message from Craven. There is important news about Brant. Let's call you. Ron did not delay, he dialed the number, and he immediately answered. Mr. Henderson, I have something for you. Based on a preliminary tip, it turned out that Brent Masters previously lived in Kansas City, where he had an affair with two women in their 40s who complained of deception and theft of money. There are no major lawsuits recorded anywhere, because, apparently, those women did not want the fuss. But it seems he makes a living by having affairs with older ladies, defrauding them of funds. Well, or at least free housing. Ron's heart sank with an unpleasant realization. His wife, apparently, was another victim for this guy. Damn it, he muttered. Can you put this in the form of an official report? Certainly. If you wish, you can contact one of the former victims if she agrees. But most likely this will not be necessary. I will prepare a text with general facts, addresses, testimonies of neighbors, photos. As soon as you are finished, let us know where it is most convenient for you to pick up the dossier. Ron thanked the detective. He felt a strange mixture of anger and humiliation. It turns out that Patty is risking not only her reputation, but also her money and her future. However, this is her choice. The main thing is that now she does not encroach on the finances that Ron was saving for his daughters and future grandchildren. During the day, there were calls from my daughters. The eldest, Kristen, called first. Dad, how are you? Edward and I are planning to come over for the weekend. I want to see everyone, discuss something important. She fell silent. I hope Mom will be home too. Ron felt his heart ache. He thought this family dinner might be the perfect time to announce his divorce. Of course, he didn't want to ruin his daughter's world, but he understood that there was no point in hiding. Yes, we will be glad to see you, he answered carefully. How are you doing there? Kristen said that things are not easy for them either. There is a lot of work, they want to buy a new house, and in general, they would like to support Mom and Dad. Ron held on without giving anything away. Almost immediately after this, the youngest, Marissa, called. Dad, Sam and I were planning to come over for lunch on Sunday. My belly is growing. I want you to see, she laughed. Ron also exchanged warm words with her, feeling his heart ache. How will they react when they find out that their parents' marriage is falling apart due to cheating? Moreover, Marissa is already emotionally vulnerable in her pregnancy. But there was no point in postponing the truth any longer. Later, Ron decided to stop by the yoga studio where Mia worked. After the conversation with the lawyer, after the information received from Craven, he wanted at least a little warmth. He knew that communicating with Mia threatened to aggravate his feelings, but he could not resist. In her presence, he felt that he was not so old, that life could go on. When he entered the studio, Mia had finished her lesson with a group of students. Seeing him, she smiled. Ron, good to see you again. Hello, Mia. Are you busy? No, we just finished. Come to the reception area. I'll make you some tea. A few minutes later, they were sitting on a soft sofa near a glass wall, behind which a blooming flower bed could be seen. Mia poured herbal tea into cups. You're kind of tense, she noted, lowering her voice. Ron sighed quietly. There are reasons. In the family. Not everything is smooth. She nodded without asking too much. Understand. If you want, I can just sit next to you. Or listen if you want. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling a warm wave of gratitude to Mia cover him. In the end, I decided to tell you briefly. He didn't go into details. He didn't want to burden Mia with too much, but she understood everything and gently put her hand on his arm. I'm sorry you have to go through this, she whispered. If you need support, I'm here. This short touch sent a wave of warmth through Ron's body. He suddenly realized that the last time he felt like this was many years ago. Not even excitement, but emotional affection and understanding. He looked into Mia's eyes. Thank you. I really appreciate it. They were silent for a while, sipping tea. Mia then asked, have you thought, maybe to distract yourself somehow, go to the movies, take a walk in the park, talk about something else? Ron grinned. Sorry, Mia, but until I'm done with the divorce, I don't want. You know, I'm not the one who becomes a cheater in response. This is not my way. I understand, she nodded, but a friendly walk is not treason. Ron agreed that they could go for coffee or a walk sometime, and at that moment he caught something more than just sympathy in Mia's eyes. But I decided to keep my feelings locked up until everything was officially over. That evening, as Ron returned home, he realized that a storm was brewing inside him. He felt an inner bundle of emotions, but kept them in an iron fist of self-control. And yet the time was approaching when all the cards would have to be laid out. The children will arrive soon, he thought. I don't want to shock them, but it's better to say everything at once and calmly. 2 days later, Jean Craven contacted Ron again. They agreed to meet in a city parking lot near a supermarket to hand over the next portion of the dossier on Brent Masters. Ron parked, saw Craven's black Ford, and moved into his car. Here, the detective held out the folder. I tried to talk to one of his ex-girlfriends. Her name is Sandra Miller. She works as a waitress in a small bar near Kansas City. According to her, he pumped $3,000 out of her in a couple of months, supposedly for some startup. Plus, he regularly lived in her house without paying a cent. Ron shook his head, frowning. And she didn't do anything. Yes, apparently he has a talent for persuasion. He promised her mountains of gold and then suddenly disappeared. Sandra did not go to the police because she was afraid of being judged. Ron imagined how the same scenario could happen to Patty. True, she is not a stupid woman, but apparently emotions and the desire to feel young and desirable turned her into this guy's puppet. The detective continued. He can be dangerous not physically, but financially. I wouldn't be surprised if your wife has already given him money or is planning to do so. Perhaps we are talking about some large sum, a car loan or something else like that. Damn, Ron gasped, feeling a mixture of pain and contempt for Patty. Thank you, Craven. You were very helpful. Please contact me. If anything, stay in touch. The detective nodded curtly, and Ron walked out, clutching the folder under his arm. He understood that this information was a strong trump card. If Patty suddenly tries to grab half of all the family savings, he can scare her with what he knows about Brent and his scams. But still, Ron was bitter with the realization. Maybe if I paid more attention to her, she wouldn't get into this dirty whirlpool. However, the blame still lay with her, because no one forced her to commit deception and betrayal. That evening, Ron returned to find Patty nervously pacing around the living room. Seeing him, she stopped abruptly. Where have you been for so long? Ron shrugged. I was traveling on business. She wanted to say something, but stopped short. She looked at him from under her brows. Why are you acting so cold? We hardly talk. He pursed his lips, trying to restrain himself. Didn't we talk a lot before? Ron, Patty seethed. I'm trying to understand what's happening to you. You have become different. You go to yoga, then wander around somewhere without explanation. Anger stirred inside him. Walking around, is that what she says when she's running around motels? But he didn't show it, trying to remain calm. Well, people change. Maybe you should do this too. Patty clenched her fists, but then seemed to pull herself together. Listen, our children are coming over for the weekend. Maybe we can have a family dinner. I want everything to be as before, so that they can see that everything is fine with us. For a moment, Ron was even taken aback by such impudence. She wants to pretend that everything is great. Well, let it be your family dinner. He nodded without expressing any emotion. Fine, as you say. A plan was already forming in his head. He will invite the children not only to have dinner, but will also tell the whole truth. Patty will have to answer for everything. The next day, he finalized all the details with the lawyer. Lauren Goodman held a thick folder in front of her. So, we're ready. We have enough facts to use against her if anything happens. Do you want to formally apply now or hand her the papers after the family talk? I think we'll do this. I'll announce this in front of the children and then privately give her the documents. Surprise, yes, unpleasant. But I have no other choice. I want the children to understand everything right away and not from her lips. The lawyer nodded understandingly. The main thing is to control yourself. If the situation gets out of control, there may be an emotional explosion. I understand, Ron replied, but I'm ready. He signed several forms, left money for legal services, and left the office with firm confidence. Day X is near. He was sad, but at the same time he felt relief there was a resolution ahead, and he was no longer obliged to live in the hell of suspicion. That same evening, he received a message on his phone. From Mia. Hi, how are you doing? I think about you and how difficult it is for you right now. If you want to talk or just drink tea, I'm in the studio until 20 o'clock. Ron read the message and felt a warm smile on his face. It had been so long since anyone had shown him this kind of concern. He responded briefly, Thank you, Mia. Everything will be decided soon. I'll write. And I felt my heart beat slightly faster at the thought of her. He wanted to tell him that soon everything would become clear and that he was free. But for now, it was necessary to bring the matter to the end without violating one's own morality. He did not want to turn himself into the same cheater that his wife had become. The day before the scheduled dinner, Patty acted quite nervously. Ron noticed that she made a lot of whispered phone calls while locking herself in the bathroom or bedroom. He guessed what was wrong with Brant because he already knew about her schedule from Craven's reports. Perhaps Brant demanded something from her, maybe money or something else. One evening, Patty tried to start a conversation with her husband. Listen, maybe we can go somewhere together after dinner with the children. Let's try to revive the relationship. Ron looked at her and was silent for a long time. Everything was boiling inside him. She has been reviving her relationship with her young lover for a long time, and then suddenly she remembered about together. It seems to me that it's too late for revival, he said coldly and went outside to smoke, although lately he had been wanting to quit. Patty remained standing there, seemingly confused and nervous. Her eyes darted. She clearly understood that he knew something, but did not know to what extent. Perhaps she hoped that it would carry away. Saturday arrived the day when the eldest daughter, Kristen, and her husband, Edward McCoy, were supposed to arrive. Around noon, the car pulled into the driveway. Ron came out to meet them. Kristen, a tall, no-nonsense woman, came out first. Hi, Dad, she said, hugging her father. Long time no see. Hello, dear. How did you get there? Fine. The roads are clear. Next came Edward, a good-natured and slightly noisy real estate agent who immediately began joking. So, Ron, are you ready for a family gathering? I hope we don't get bored. Ron smiled, trying to hide his inner tension. Yes, let's hope we don't get bored. He led them into the house, where Patty had already prepared the guest room. Kristen somehow looked warily at her mother. Mom, you look tired. Everything is fine. Patty pulled herself together and smiled through her strength. Yes, just a lot of work at the clinic. Everything is fine. Ron watched this scene from the side. He saw that his daughter felt some kind of falseness, but did not yet understand what it was. Internally, Ron was preparing for a big conversation, but decided to wait for the arrival of his youngest daughter, Marissa, to explain everything at once. Kristen suggested we have lunch right away. Patty rearranged the plates on the table, while her hands trembled. Edward, not noticing anything, continued to joke. We listened to the radio along the way, and they were broadcasting about some interesting campaigns, second youth after 50. Like, fitness clubs give discounts and all that. Ron, we need to go in for sports, otherwise we'll soon be completely old people. He winked, as if not thinking that this might be an inappropriate topic. Ron chuckled humorlessly. The thought of a second youth had been firmly in his head lately. Kristen caught her father's tone and looked at him questioningly, but did not say anything. Patty stood at the stove, silently stirring the gravy. When everyone sat down at the table, the conversation was about trifles. Kristen's work in a law firm, how Edward is doing, what houses he is currently selling. Sometimes Kristen would try to ask, "What's new with you?" And then Patty or Ron would answer as neutrally as possible. "Yeah, everything's fine," Ron drawled, not wanting to go into details. There was a heavy atmosphere in the air that everyone felt, except perhaps Edward, who was prone to carefree optimism. Finally, after dessert, Ron stood up, excused himself, and went out into the yard, giving himself a break from the tense conversations. Imagine Ron's surprise when, half an hour later, an unfamiliar car drove into the yard, a red sports Mazda. A young guy was driving. Ron froze in place, instantly feeling his heart explode with adrenaline. Brent Masters got out of the car. The same hero from the photographs. Brent apparently didn't notice Ron at first and went straight to the door. But then he saw the owner of the house. Confusion flashed in his eyes for a moment, but he quickly smiled contemptuously. "Oh, you must be Ron, to Patty." Ron clenched his fists, trying not to lose his temper. He didn't expect this puppy to show up right under his nose in front of his daughter. "Patty? She's inside," he said coldly. "But you know, I don't think you have the right to just come here." Brent scratched the back of his head, apparently sensing something was wrong. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Patty asked me to drop off some papers. We talked this morning. It'll take 2 minutes. Can I come in?" Ron was literally shaking with indignation, but he clenched his teeth. "I don't want to start a public fight in front of my daughter," he thought. I decided to pretend that I knew nothing. He stepped aside. "Come in, just quickly." Brent walked past him, piercing his owner's gaze into the area. How impudent he is, Ron thought with hatred. Walking into the house, the guy found Kristen and Edward in the living room, looking at him dumbfounded. Patty, seeing him, turned pale and dropped the teaspoon. "Brent?" she exclaimed, not knowing what to say. Kristen frowned. "Who is this, Mom?" Patty looked between Brant and her daughter in confusion, obviously not knowing how to explain. But Brant quickly seized the initiative. "Oh, sorry, I'm Brent. Your mother and I are colleagues on a financial project. I brought her some papers. She asked me very much." He tried to smile charmingly. "What other project?" Kristen continued to look suspiciously. "Mom, you're an accountant in a dental clinic. What kind of projects might there be?" Patty's eyes darted around, and Edward fell completely silent, clutching a glass of unfinished tea. Finally, Patty said, "Brent, just helping with investments. We need to talk face to face." Ron followed him in, trying to figure out if he should intervene right now. The look of general panic was even to his advantage. All of Patty's fake smiles crumbled like a house of cards. Kristen squinted suspiciously, sensing that the matter smelled of something indecent. The seconds passed slowly. "Shall we go to the next room?" Patty quickly suggested. "Just for a couple of minutes." Brant nodded, and the two of them disappeared into the corridor. The others were left standing in awkward silence. Kristen turned to Ron. "Dad, what's going on?" Ron pursed his lips. "I want to understand this myself. Let's wait." Whispers and muffled exclamations were heard in the corridor. Patty and Brant seemed to be arguing slightly. Ron caught a few phrases. "You didn't say you were coming. Why didn't you say that you have guests at home?" They didn't seem to have a plan in place, and Brant decided to show his chutzpah by showing up unannounced. Finally, they came out. Brant, trying to remain independent, said a short, "I'll go, Patty. I'm waiting for your call," and walked out the door without saying goodbye to the others. There was tension in the living room as all eyes turned to Patty. Kristen frowned. "Mom, what kind of circus? Who is this anyway?" Patty nervously brushed her hair out of her face and glanced at Ron, as if seeking his support, but saw only his cold gaze. He clearly had no intention of helping her. After a moment's hesitation, Patty pretended to pull herself together. "Brent is a friend. I just wanted to invest some money to increase my savings, but I didn't want to tell you until it was clear whether the project would work." Kristen looked at her in bewilderment. "Invest some money? Why so secret?" Patty shrugged, awkwardly feigning calm. "This is my personal business, the money is mine, and in general, let's not talk about it. We wanted to spend the weekend together and talk about your affairs." Edward coughed. "Well, if this is just a friend, why did he come in as if it were his own home? And why are your hands shaking?" Patty said nothing, turned away, and hurried to the kitchen under the pretext of getting some napkins. Everyone in the living room stood as if under a spell of awkwardness. Kristen looked at Ron. "Dad, I don't believe this whole story. Are you sure everything is okay?" Ron realized that he couldn't and didn't want to wait any longer. "But I decided to wait for my youngest daughter, Marissa, to immediately explain it to everyone. I hoped that I wouldn't have to explain the same thing a second time." Then he muttered, "Let's wait for Marissa, and then I'll tell you everything. I promise." Kristen nodded, seeing that her father was clearly hiding something, but did not want to talk now. Edward, although not the most insightful person, also realized that something was unclean and tried to somehow diffuse the atmosphere. "Well, maybe we'll watch football, or should we go for a walk?" Everyone agreed that it was better to leave the house a little while Patty reanimated her calmness. But the tension has not gone away. In the evening, the youngest daughter, Marissa, arrived with her fiancé, Sam. Seeing her father, she rushed to hug him. "Dad, I'm so glad to see you. Look, my belly has already grown." She cheerfully showed her rounded belly. Ron smiled, trying to push away the heavy thoughts. "Yeah, I'm looking forward to it." Marissa frowned, realizing that her father's smile was not entirely sincere. "Dad, are you okay? You are somehow not yourself." He led her into the living room, where Kristen and Edward were already sitting. Patty flashed somewhere in the corridor, trying not to be seen. Sam, a modest man, greeted everyone, noticed the tense atmosphere, but did not ask anything. When everyone finally sat down, Ron and Patty pretended they were going to serve dinner. But Patty acted even more nervously. She dropped the plate, which broke on the floor, and cursed quietly, something she had never done before. "Mom, maybe you shouldn't be so nervous," Marissa asked, picking up the pieces. "What's happened? We are all here for the sake of the family. We want to talk calmly." Patty didn't answer, but Ron said quietly, "Let's sit down at the table. I want to say something important before we start eating." Everyone sat down silently. Kristen and Marissa looked at each other, waiting for some kind of statement. Edward frowned, clearly anticipating a storm. Sam lowered his eyes, apparently realizing that there were family squabbles here, and it was better for him not to interfere too much. Patty sat down opposite Ron, looking down at her plate. "So," Ron began, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. "This may be hard for you to hear, but—" He hushed, gathering his thoughts. Patty whispered quietly, "Ron, maybe not now." He looked at her firmly. "No, now." Turned to his daughters. "Your mother and I are facing a divorce." "What?" Kristen burst out. "Are you serious?" Marissa covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears. "But how can that be? You've been together for 30 years. Edward leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, news." Patty stood up abruptly. "Ron, couldn't you have warned me that you wanted to discuss this in front of them? This is too much. It hurts them. Doesn't your betrayal hurt?" Ron suddenly barked loudly, breaking into a scream. "Come on, tell your daughters why we are getting a divorce. Tell us about the projects and your friend Brent." There was dead silence. Kristen turned pale. "Mom, Is it because of the guy who came today? What? Marissa exclaimed. What type? Edward realized it was time to intervene. Calm down, friends. Let's not fight. But Patty could no longer hide her confusion. Her voice trembled. Ron, not in front of the children. Please. Why not in front of the children? They are no longer children, they are adults. Yes, we will have a divorce. And yes, your mother has a young lover, Brent Masters. Ron took a breath, looking around at the confused faces of his daughters. I didn't want you to find out this way, but she leaves me no choice. Marissa was close to hysterics. Mom, tell me that this is not true. Tell me that Dad is wrong. Patty buried her face in her hands and moaned softly. Sorry, Marissa. Sorry, Kristen. Kristen clenched her fists. My God, Mom, how could you? You always talked about loyalty, about family values. Edward, seeing his wife's tears, tried to diffuse the situation with a stupid comment. Well, apparently sex, even at their age, has a huge role. But I thought it was. Damn it, I don't even know what to say. Kristen waved him off. Seriously, Edward, now is not the time for such comments. Ron slammed his fist on the table. You have no idea how much pain I've been in all this time. I thought she and I were growing old together, but it turns out she was looking for a young stallion. And this stud calls me old fart. From these words, Patty's face distorted with despair. Yes, I would put up with it if she wanted to leave honestly, but no behind my back. Finally, Patty tried to say something. I don't know how this happened. I was bored, I wanted to feel young. Yes, it's my fault, I'm sorry. Her voice broke. Don't leave me like that, don't humiliate me. Ron laughed bitterly. Are you talking about humiliation when you made a fool of me? There will be a divorce. On fair terms, don't worry, I won't deprive you of your home. But kindly refrain from deception, at least in front of our children. Patty sobbed. The daughters were shocked. Marissa covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. I can't believe it. Mom, Dad, why? Kristen sighed heavily, trying to maintain composure. So what now? Will you sign the papers right now? Ron shook his head. No, we will discuss the details in private. But I wanted you to know the truth, and not hear it from strangers, or from the lips of her friend. Sorry if I shocked you. The mood at the table became so tense that a normal dinner was no longer out of the question. Patty almost stopped speaking, bursting into tears. Marissa, a frustrated pregnant woman, began urging her parents to think again. Kristen tried to console her sister while throwing disapproving glances at her mother. Edward felt it best to take a short break and suggested, maybe everyone needs to calm down and think. Let's go to the living room. Let's try to distract ourselves. But no one was in the mood to be distracted. The family dinner fell into the abyss of scandal and pain. Ron, feeling empty, said he needed to get out. I threw on my jacket and went outside to breathe in some fresh air. He didn't think he would say it all so sharply, but he said it anyway. And now there is no turning back. Standing at the doorstep of the house, Ron wondered, what's next? He realized that he had essentially already crossed the point of no return. The conversation with the children took place, the secret was revealed, and now nothing will remain the same. Patty is on the verge of losing not only her husband, but also the respect of her own daughters. Brant received a signal that Ron was not blind. And Ron himself. He may be on the threshold of a new life, although now it seems scary. The thought of Mia popped into my head. That somewhere in the city there is a woman who supports him, does not demand anything in return, does not betray, does not lie. And what if this is precisely the hope for a second youth? But it's too early. He didn't want to turn everything into a banal eye for an eye. It's better to wait for the official divorce, and then we'll see. The drama continued inside the house. Patty's screams, tears, Marissa's complete confusion, Kristen's heavy silence, and Edward's awkward attempts to joke. But Ron didn't want to go back to that now. He needed a few minutes of solitude to take a deep breath and realize, yes, I did it. I decided to cut off the rotting rope, and now I'm free to say I'm leaving. A few minutes after Ron went outside to clear his head, his eldest daughter, Kristen, ran out after him. She looked confused and disheveled. It wasn't often you saw this usually reserved and confident woman in such a state. "Dad," she called quietly, coming closer. Forgive me if I was harsh. It's just such a shock for me. I'm proud of you and Mom all the time, but here." She paused and blinked away tears. Ron touched her shoulder softly. "I understand everything, dear. Sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I wanted you to know everything right away and directly." Kristen sighed. "I can't believe my mom could do that. And this guy, Brent, he's just some kind of boy. And to be honest, he looks like a gigolo. Do you think she really loved him?" Ron suppressed a bitter smile. "I don't know if this is love. Rather, an attempt to regain youth. But she did everything too late and too dirty. I can no longer understand or forgive her." Kristen nodded, then lowered her head. "What will happen now? Divorce? I understand your pain, but maybe I should go to family therapy. Baby, if we were talking about simple misunderstandings, grievances, we could think about therapy. But here," Ron chuckled sadly, "let's just say I don't want to live with a man who was secretly having an affair and considered me written off material." "Sorry, Dad. I'll support you." Kristen hugged him. Ron felt a warm wave of affection for his daughter and gratitude for her staying by his side. But the main understanding was that everything really can't be returned to the old way. Meanwhile, inside the house, Marissa was sobbing on the couch, cuddled up to Sam. Patty sat next to her, trying to explain something to her daughter, but it didn't work out well. "Look, baby, I didn't mean for it to happen. I loved your father, I got confused. It began to seem to me that life was passing by, and he didn't notice me." Marissa threw tears. "But Mom, we could have talked. Why did you cheat? I'm shocked." "Forgive me," Patty took her hand. "I understand that I acted meanly. But Marissa, please don't turn your back on me. You're going to have a baby soon. I want to be there." Marissa looked into her mother's eyes. "I don't turn away, but I love Dad too, and it pains me to see both of you destroy everything we thought of as family values." Patty realized with despair that with her selfish act, she would not be able to easily fix her relationship with either her husband or her daughter. Sam, who was sitting next to her, was stroking Marissa's hand, but he looked confused, not knowing what to say. Surely he didn't want to get involved in a family scandal at a time when Marissa was pregnant and vulnerable. In the corner of the living room, Edward, left without anyone to talk to, walked in circles, trying to figure out how to help. He stole glances at Patty and Marissa. "Finally, I decided to approach them. Maybe everything will work out somehow." Well, after all, life doesn't end with one incident, right? Marissa looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Ed, this is not one incident. This is a deception that lasted more than 1 month. Mom was dating this guy in secret from Dad. This is a betrayal." Edward realized that there was no point in joking and fell silent. In such an environment, any phrase may seem cynical, but he loved Kristen and respected her father, so he also felt disappointed in Patty. And who would have thought that such a good woman would even start an affair? A thought wandered through his head. When Kristen and Ron returned to the living room, Kristen took on the role of arbiter. As a lawyer, she was accustomed to resolving conflicts, although not so personal. "Okay, listen," she turned to everyone. "I understand that we are emotional now, but we still need to calmly discuss how you are going to act. Dad, you want to file for divorce, right?" Ron sighed and nodded. "Yes, I have already hired a lawyer. The documents are almost ready. I wanted my mother, or rather, Patty," he called his wife by name for the first time without Mom, which sounded distant, "to know about this right now. And so do you all." "Fine. Then what's next?" Kristen looked at Patty. "Mom, you can't deny that you had an affair, can you?" Patty hunched over. "I don't deny it. It's my fault, but I don't want us to tear everything to shreds." "What do you want?" Marissa asked, having difficulty calming her tears. Continue to live as if nothing happened. Patty shook her head. This is probably impossible. I just, I don't know how to move on. I'm scared. Kristen softened a little, seeing how truly lost her mother was. Mom, I understand your fear, but it's your choice. Dad is not a boy to tolerate, and Marissa and I are already adults. Exactly, said Ron. I don't intend to continue this performance. And frankly, if it weren't for the children, I would have simply submitted the documents silently. But I decided that you girls have the right to know. After the conversation, everyone felt devastated. A lot of time had passed since lunch, and no one had eaten. The appetite had disappeared. Ron realized that perhaps the most important thing had already been said. Everything is clear to the children. Then there are the legal and moral consequences. He pulled out a folder of documents from his bag that Lauren Goodman had given him. He carefully placed it on the coffee table. Patty, when I go to court, you'll be the first to know. I'm not going to make a show out of this, but I won't delay it either. I hope you understand that you will not be happy with your gigolo lover. The wife did not answer. She just clenched her fists and said quietly, whatever you want. Marissa couldn't hold back her tears again. At least you talk to each other normally. It's hard for me to watch this. Ron smiled bitterly. How can you have a normal conversation with a person who betrayed me? Sorry, honey, I can't put on a good face right now. And then the youngest daughter, stopping crying, suddenly said, but Dad, let's be honest. Mom did a terrible thing, but you have been estranged from each other for a long time. Maybe you also didn't do everything so that she wouldn't feel lonely. Ron froze as he heard Marissa question his integrity as well. Of course, I'm not ideal, he admitted, but that doesn't justify betrayal. Is there no other way but to go left? Marissa shrugged. No, it doesn't justify it. But still, sometimes people cheat not only because they want a younger body, but because they are emotionally unhappy. Patty looked at her daughter gratefully, but remained silent. Ron realized that Marissa was trying to understand her mother's motives, but it didn't really matter to him anymore. He spoke. Perhaps we are both responsible for the fact that the family was not as happy as it seemed from the outside. But the fact remains, she lied to me. Kristen chimed in. I think that's enough mutual reproaches. Dad, you said the documents are almost ready. Mom, if you are ready to get a divorce, you will have your own legal protection, but in any case, it is worth talking without us. She stood up. Edward and I will stay at the hotel. I need to digest everything. Edward nodded in agreement. Marissa looked at her fiancé, Sam. Sam, maybe we can go too. Sam nodded. So literally an hour later, the children were already packing their things, saying goodbye, promising to call them and find out how everything was going. It was clear that Kristen and Marissa were in a state of emotional shock, and their husbands were confused, but trying to support. When the children left, a tense silence fell in the house. Patty and Ron were left alone in the living room, opposite each other. She said quietly, they left. I'm sorry it turned out this way. I didn't want to tear my family apart in such a cruel way. Ron sighed heavily. Perhaps you didn't exactly want this scene, but you definitely wanted something different. And this other became Brent Masters. I know enough about him to say he is a deceiver. Patty raised her eyes. What do you mean? I have a file on him. He is a gigolo who lives off women. He had several stories in Kansas City. If you think that he will save you from loneliness, then I'm afraid you are mistaken. Patty pursed her lips. I already began to understand this and wanted to break up with him, which is why I suggested going somewhere. But I didn't think you'd dig it all up like that. Ron grinned. Don't flatter yourself. I did this not out of jealousy, but to protect what I had earned over the years. I won't let this guy rob me of the future I still want to build. At these words, Patty smiled bitterly. Yes, a future with another woman. I noticed that you go somewhere in the evenings, do yoga, go to a cafe. Are you really too? No, Ron snapped harshly. I didn't cheat on you, Patty, don't worry. But now that you have taken the first step, I am free internally. So maybe I'll have a chance to start again. She closed her eyes, realizing that she was truly losing him forever. And without finding words, she quietly got up and went to her bedroom. Ron remained in the living room with his head in his hands. It hurt him, but it was definitely easier than in those days when he only guessed about her betrayal. It was already dark outside the windows, and only the table lamp was burning in the room. Ron remembered Mia, that perhaps she would cheer him up now, would find the right words. But he decided not to rush, to let himself breathe out. The divorce had not yet been finalized, and although he felt that life was slowly pushing him in a new direction, he did not want to take steps in a hurry. I'm not an old fart, he thought with slight irony. Just a man who discovered the whole truth about marriage when he was almost 60. And this thought did not kill him, on the contrary, it gave him hope that everything was ahead. It's difficult, yes. It hurts, yes. But a bitter reality is better than an eternal lie. The next morning, there was deathly silence in the house. Patty didn't seem to leave the bedroom at all. Ron got up, washed his face, and looked into the kitchen. Should he cook breakfast for two or just make himself some coffee? I decided to limit myself to coffee. Maybe she needs time to come to her senses. He remembered how he saw her face in the evening, confused, guilty. But he himself no longer had much pity left. There was only a feeling. I let all the emotions out of me, and now it's empty. A strange mixture of devastation and freedom. Messages from both daughters arrived on the mobile phone almost simultaneously. From Kristen. Dad, we've already reached the hotel. I didn't sleep all night. I thought about you all the time. I hope you're hanging in there. From Marissa. Dad, I'm sorry I didn't support you as much as I should yesterday. I was in shock. I love you and understand everything. I'm just upset about my mother. If you need anything, I'm here. Ron answered both, trying to be calm. Thank you, girls. I'm fine, holding on. We'll talk later. Take care of yourself. He felt that he would have to explain the details to them many more times in the future, but for now he wanted to give them a break from the emotional storm. At 10 in the morning, Lauren Goodman called. Mr. Henderson, how are you? Are we ready to officially submit documents, or do you want more time? Ron sighed softly. I think it's time. I told my wife and children. Everything, as they say, was laid out on the table. I see, Lauren replied. Send me confirmation, and we will file a claim on the same day. And then it's a matter of time. But be prepared for the possibility that Patty might hire her own lawyer and start haggling. I'm ready, Ron said. I have all the evidence, including materials on her lover, which I can also hand over to the court if she argues about the division. Great. Then today I will draw up everything and submit it. We'll see about the review period, but usually a couple of months before the divorce is final. If the parties do not delay, it will go faster. Ron knew this was officially the beginning of the end, and despite the pain, I wanted it all to end as soon as possible. He couldn't live in limbo for too long. While Ron was drinking coffee, Patty finally came into the kitchen. Her hair is disheveled, there are circles under her eyes. It is clear that she has hardly slept. She sat down opposite him without looking him in the eyes. I heard you called your lawyer? Ron nodded. Yes, I'm filing for divorce, just like I said. She swallowed. Understand. Can we talk about how we can share everything, without trial, without unnecessary fuss? Ron crossed his arms over his chest. If you agree to terms that I consider fair, perhaps we can do everything quietly. I don't want to drag both of us through the courts, but I won't share everything equally given your actions. My lawyer will draw up a plan, you'll see. Okay, she sighed. It's important for me to maintain at least some stability. I don't want. Her voice trembled. To stay on the street. Ron took a deep breath. I'm not a monster, Patty. But remember, I will not return to you. It's all over for us. I will divide the property and leave you enough money so that you will not be in poverty, but no more. She closed her eyes, nodding quietly. Then she squeezed out. Forgive me. I'm sorry that this happened. He didn't answer. And I didn't want to say, I forgive you, now because the pain is still too alive. Silence hung over the kitchen table, and at that moment Ron felt that the end of this marriage was already a matter of time. Later that afternoon, Ron received a call from Mia. He went out into the garden so Patty wouldn't hear. "Hi, Ron." Mia's voice was soft and a little excited. "I'm worried about you. How are you?" "That's better," he admitted. "I told the children everything, exposed everything to the light. I'm filing for divorce. I understand that this is difficult. Maybe you need some support?" He thought for a moment. He really just wanted to talk, to be next to someone who would not betray, would not reproach, but would simply listen. But he did not want to rush into a new relationship until he had formally ended the old one. And yet, "Mia, I appreciate your desire to help. Maybe we can meet somewhere in a cafe, just to talk." She smiled. "Certainly. I have a free evening today. I can go at 6 o'clock. There is one cozy place, Cinnamon Leaf on Main Street. Okay, I'll be there." As Ron finished the call, he felt a slight shiver of excitement. For the first time in a long time, he arranges a meeting with a woman without a hint of guilt. But this is not a novel yet, he reminded himself, just friendly support. And yet, a sprout of hope for something more was already breaking through inside. In the evening, an hour before the meeting, Ron got ready to go out. Patty sat in front of the TV, mindlessly switching channels. Seeing that he was putting on a fresher shirt and embellishing his hair, she guessed that he was not just going for a walk. "Where are you going?" she asked, trying to speak evenly, but her voice betrayed anxiety. "To the city." "On business," he answered briefly. "On business?" She smiled bitterly. "You got a woman, right?" He looked at her without a smile. "It's none of your business, Patty. We've already decided everything." It was as if her heart had been pierced. She wanted to scream and reproach, but she understood that it was her own fault. She bit her lip and looked away. "Okay, go." Ron saw her clutching the remote control, her shoulders tense. He felt sorry for her, but not enough to give up his plans. He quietly left the house and got into the car in which the two of them had once traveled to the Lake of the Ozarks. Everything is becoming a thing of the past, he thought, starting the engine. At 6 o'clock in the evening, he arrived at a neat building in the center of Springfield, a small cafe with soft, dim lighting, which smelled of cinnamon and fresh pastries. Mia was already waiting at the table by the window. Seeing Ron, she smiled and waved to him. "Hello, how are you?" "Hello." He sat down opposite. "Thank you for coming." They ordered coffee. Mia suggested trying a local pastry cinnamon rolls. Ron agreed, although his appetite was average. "But I wanted to enjoy something pleasant, at least a little." "Tell me what you have," Mia asked, leaning closer. "If, of course, you want to share." Ron briefly and calmly outlined the situation: family dinner, scandal, confession to the children, intention to file for divorce. He didn't go into hard details, but Mia understood everything. I listened to him with sympathy and without unnecessary questions. "You're coping amazingly well," she said. "Most men would either get drunk or break." "I'm an engineer by nature," Ron joked sadly. "I'm always looking for where to close the leak tap." "And in this case, is the tap a scam?" Mia clarified. "I think so. It hurts, though, but it's already easier than living in that lie." Mia lightly touched his hand. "I'm glad you started the path to freedom. And I don't want to put pressure, just to know. Do you mind if I invite you for a walk sometimes? I enjoy your company." Ron felt something swell in his chest. "Of course, I don't mind. Thank you for your understanding." They spent almost 2 hours in the cafe, talking about various little things, about Mia's life, her yoga studio, and the fact that Ron plans to take his health more seriously. They spoke in whispers, sometimes smiling. Ron felt warmer inside. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he didn't have to hide his emotions. When Ron returned home late that evening, Patty was already asleep, or pretending to be. He quietly walked into the living room, where the folder with the divorce papers was still lying. He sat down in a chair, looked at them, and realized that he would soon sign them completely. The morning after meeting Mia in the cafe began for Ron without the usual heavy thoughts. It was as if he felt that a small outlet had appeared in his soul. He drank coffee by the window, looking out onto a quiet Springfield street where neighbors went about their normal Saturday lives, some walking the dog, some taking out the trash. Ron thought about how his life had been turned upside down in a matter of weeks. Patty left the bedroom later than usual. Her appearance betrayed a sleepless night, reddish eyes, rumpled hair. At the same time, she still tried to keep her back straight, trying to look dignified. They exchanged short nods. "Good morning," she said quietly, pouring water into the kettle. Ron didn't answer, just nodded. There was a tense pause between them. This went on for several minutes until Patty decided to speak. "I was thinking, maybe we should go to the bank today to see how best we can distribute our savings." Ron put his cup on the table. "Yes, perhaps it's worth it. After Lauren files the paperwork, we still have to formalize everything. I don't want any big scandals," Patty managed. "I hope you understand." "I'm not looking for scandal," Ron replied dryly, "but I won't back down. I have already voiced my conditions. The house remains for me. Part of the savings remains for you. Plus, if you want, we can exchange some real estate. In any case, the lawyers will sort it out." Patty looked at him point blank. "What if I want to fight for the house?" Ron felt his stomach tighten. Anger flared up in him. She, who committed betrayal, can still cling to property. "Then I will be forced to present all the evidence of your deception in court. Believe me, they are eloquent, and I'm afraid you won't like it," he said firmly. Patty looked away, pursing her lips. Then she nodded. "Okay, I won't fight. I just—" She stopped short of finishing her sentence and walked out into the backyard with a cup of tea. Ron looked at her, realizing that she herself did not fully know what she wanted. He sighed. There's no turning back now. That afternoon, Ron received a call from Lauren Goodman. Her voice sounded evenly. "Mr. Henderson, we have submitted an application. The court will set a hearing date soon. I will send you a confirmation email. Be prepared. It may take several meetings to sign papers if your wife decides to hire a lawyer." "Thanks, Lauren," Ron replied. "I'm mentally prepared. I hope everything goes off without too much fuss. Given your evidence, I believe she will not want publicity. But beware, sometimes people make strange decisions when they lose ground," Lauren warned. Ron understood that this was a hint about Patty's possible unpredictable actions. "I'll be careful," he promised mentally. In the afternoon, Ron got into the car and drove towards the hotel where Kristen and Edward were staying. He wanted to see his daughter and find out how she was. Kristen, going out into the hotel lobby, smiled tiredly. "Dad, how are things at home?" "It's hard, but everything is going as usual. I filed for divorce. The court will set a date soon." Kristen sighed. "I can imagine how difficult it is for you. Edward and I will probably go back to St. Louis one of these days. But if you need help, tell me. You already helped me just by listening." Ron smiled, touching her shoulder. "How is Marissa? I didn't call her today. I don't want to worry about her again." Kristen darkened. "She's very worried, plus hormones. But he tries to hold on for the sake of the child. I think I should call her in the evening and tell her that everything will be fine." Ron nodded, knowing he had to support his youngest daughter. He hated to hurt them, but still believed that they should know the truth and not live in rosy illusions. Returning late in the evening, Ron found a missed call on his phone from an unfamiliar number. When I called back, I heard a familiar boorish voice. "Hey, it's Brent. I decided that I needed to talk to you, old man. Listen, why do you need all this? Divorce, scandal. Maybe there is a way to solve everything quietly." Ron gritted his teeth. The very address, old man, already infuriated him. "Boy, I have nothing to do with you," he said coldly. "You can roll in all four directions." "Well, I have business with you," Brent grinned. "She might change her mind, you know. You shouldn't bother us." Ron exhaled angrily. "I repeat once again, my wife is free as soon as the divorce is over. But I won't let you suck money out of her and make a fool of me. By the way, I know about your previous girlfriends in Kansas City. Brant paused for a moment, apparently stunned that Ron was so knowledgeable. Then he changed his tone. Listen, grandfather, don't go where you don't belong. Otherwise, you will regret it. Ron didn't have time to answer. The connection was lost. As he put the phone away, he realized that Brent was starting to show his teeth. But that didn't bother Ron now. He just felt determined inside. Just try to get close to me or my daughters. I will do everything so that you get what you deserve. The next day, when Ron returned from a short trip to the hardware store to buy some small items for repairs in the garage, he found an unusual sight in the house. Patty was preparing dinner. The table is set, candles, cutlery, it's like everything is like the good old days. What is this? He asked, not even hiding his surprise. Patty looked away. I just wanted to talk like a human being. No screams or scandals. Sit down. Ron lowered his bag to the floor. I don't remember when we had dinner together like this. You haven't done anything like this for a long time. She sighed. I know. Maybe I was hoping that if we just ate together, we could remember how life was before all these problems. A bitterness stirred within Ron. He understood that she was trying to sweeten the pill and perhaps achieve more lenient terms for the divorce. Or did she really have a belated impulse to fix everything? He sat down, but without much enthusiasm. They were eating pasta and sauce that Patty had made on their first family date years ago. Rare phrases were exchanged in silence. After about 10 minutes, Patty spoke. Ron, I know it's my fault, and I'm not asking for forgiveness, but maybe, while we are not officially divorced, we can try to live peacefully, without constant silent contempt. Ron looked at her. Fatigue and some kind of sadness were visible in her eyes. I agree to live peacefully, he said calmly, but don't expect me to forget how you humiliated me. Besides, I am no longer the same former husband. I'm a different person. Patty put her hands on her knees. Understand, I just don't want war. I will give up claims to the house if you help me buy a small home, or at least give me the amount so that I can take out a mortgage, and leave me our car. Ron nodded, writing it down in his head. You can leave the car, we'll sort it out about part of the savings, but it's too late to let you back into my life. Sitting at the table, they exchanged several caustic remarks. But then Patty suddenly said, I wanted to break up with Brent before everything came out. He began to demand money for some project. I realized that he was using me like that Sandra. Ron leaned forward. So you knew about Sandra too? No, I didn't know the names. He just let it slip that it was not the first time. He was dating an older woman. It hurt me. But until the last moment, I was afraid that you would guess everything, and I wanted to save the marriage, or at least maintain your comfort. She smiled sadly. In the end, it turned out that I lost everything. Ron didn't answer. A strange feeling of pity and irritation arose in him at the same time. He knew that Patty might actually be sorry, but the aftertaste of betrayal was too strong. Whether you regret it or not, it's still too late, he concluded. The documents have been submitted. Get ready for a new life without me. After dinner, Ron stood up and headed to the bedroom to change clothes. Walking down the corridor, I saw a family photo on the shelf, the same photo where he and Patty are hugging against the backdrop of the Lake of the Ozarks, and their daughters are very small, laughing. Once upon a time, this photo was a symbol of their happy family idyll. Ron took the frame in his hands. I remembered that warm summer day, the taste of fried sausages, and the laughter of children. I remembered how he looked at Patty with love. And now everything is broken, and it seems that it can no longer be put back together. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Patty appeared on the threshold and saw a photograph in his hands. Do you remember how we were boating that time and Marissa almost fell into the water? Ron smiled wryly. I remember. Our girl, how she burst into laughter. Patty made a timid attempt to put her hand on his shoulder, but he pulled away. Let's not play on nostalgia. he said sharply. The past will not return. She looked down. Yes, I understand. In the morning, Ron decided to call his youngest daughter to find out how she was feeling after the shocking news. Marissa answered quickly, sounding a little tired. Hello, Dad. How are you? As normal as possible in such a situation. How are you? It's hard for me. I constantly think about you, about Mom. Sam tries to calm me down, but I'm worried how everything will turn out. Ron sighed quietly. I filed for divorce. Documents in court. Mom seems to agree to the division of property without a scandal, so I hope we can do without lengthy proceedings. But Marissa, I'm so sorry you're going through all this during your pregnancy. She sobbed slightly. It's not your fault, Dad. I just can't accept the fact that the family is falling apart. The family is not collapsing. It's just that my mother and I can no longer be husband and wife. But we're still your parents, Ron tried to reassure her. We will always be close, even if we are apart. Marissa thanked him and said that she would soon come to her next doctor's appointment in Springfield. Maybe then she would visit her father. Ron promised to arrange a meeting time to support her. He ended the conversation with the feeling that he was at least trying to maintain a warm connection with his daughter. Later that day, Ron went out to the backyard to mow the lawn. Suddenly, I heard a sharp squeal of brakes at the entrance. Looking out, I saw a familiar red Mazda. Brent jumped out of the car and went straight to the gate, shouting, Hey, old man, where did your wife go? She doesn't answer calls. Ron felt his insides boil. He calmly put the bush shears on the ground and came out to meet him. Listen, guy, don't you dare drive up here and yell. This is my home. You are not welcome here. Brent grimaced. I don't care whose house it is. I was looking for Patty. We have unfinished business. Your business with her is over. Ron snapped coldly. She doesn't owe you anything. So get out before I call the police. Brent clenched his fists as he stepped closer. Listen, grandfather, don't threaten me with the cops. I wanted to offer a deal. You give her money, she gives me some, and everyone is happy. Do you want her to not go to court with demands? Then keep in mind that I can persuade her to swing her license. Ron almost shuddered at such cynicism. He leaned on the fence, looking straight into the insolent face. Are you completely crazy? Do you think I'll be scared? I don't care about your threats anymore. I'll tell the judge and lawyers about your business. I'm sure you won't like it. Brent gritted his teeth. Oh, you. Listen, I can decide differently. Try it. Ron didn't look away. Look at what Patty has brought you to, and understand, there's nothing good for you here. So get out. At that moment, the door to the house opened and Patty looked out and saw them. She ran up in panic. Brent, why did you come? I told you I won't give you money. Brent turned to her. What about your promises? You said you would help. Your promises, Brant, ended when you started blackmailing me. Patty blurted out. Leave. I've already decided everything. Apparently, such a rebuff shocked the guy. He flashed his eyes evilly. Well, okay, live as you want. But don't be surprised if things backfire. With that, he turned around, got into the car, and drove away, kicking up the gravel. Ron exchanged a dark look with Patty. Standing at the fence, they were both breathing heavily from the intensity. Finally, Patty whispered, I'm sorry he came here again. I didn't know that he would dare. It seems like I explained everything to him over the phone. Ron paused, realizing that this time Patty was really trying to keep Brant away. It was strange for him to admit this, but thanks to her for clearly refusing further connections with the gigolo. Make sure he doesn't harm you, he said quietly. If necessary, contact the police. Patty chuckled bitterly. Can you imagine how that sounds? An elderly lady complained that her young lover was extorting money from her. Ron smiled wryly. There's nothing wrong with a person making threats. But decide for yourself. This is already your life. They separated, feeling exhausted, and only one thing was clear. Brant had completely lost his leverage over Patty, and Ron received the satisfaction of not allowing himself to be intimidated. A day later, Ron, tired of the tense situation at home, decided to take a ride around the city, just to take his mind off things. He parked near Springfield's Central Park and went for a walk. Imagine his surprise when on one of the alleys he saw Mia. She was running along the path in a tracksuit. "Oh, Ron," she exclaimed joyfully when she saw him. "Have you decided to get some fresh air too?" He smiled, even feeling a slight surge of warmth. "Yes, I'm tired of sitting at home in this atmosphere." Mia took a few breaths, regaining her breath. "Will you join me? I've already run, I can walk." They slowly walked along the path between the flowering flower beds, talking about trifles. Ron seemed to have forgotten about the divorce, about Brant's threats. A sunny morning, birds singing, and a smiling Mia. It all created the illusion that life could be normal. "How are you doing with the official side?" she asked softly as they moved away from the crowded alleys. Ron shrugged. "Submitted an application. I'm waiting for my court date. I hope she doesn't delay." "How are you?" Mia blushed a little. "I'm fine. The studio is working, however. There haven't been enough clients lately. There's a crisis, but I'm holding on." She looked at him sincerely. "I really want everything to get better for you as soon as possible." Ron felt a warm wave of gratitude. They sat down on the bench. Mia covered his hand with her hand, and he suddenly realized that he did not feel guilty after all. He was already morally free from marriage, a marriage that actually doesn't exist. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You give me back the feeling that I'm not completely old and broken." "This may sound strange, but I am grateful for your presence." Mia smiled softly. "It's not strange. I'm just nearby. And yes, I care what happens to you." A desire to hug her was born inside Ron, but he restrained himself for now, realizing that officially the marriage still existed. Instead, they talked for about half an hour, discussing Mia's plans to expand the yoga studio, joking about the oil tycoon who once mistook the door and walked into her class. Normal human conversation gave Ron a sense of normalcy that he had been missing. Returning home, Ron saw a message from Lauren. "Preliminary hearing scheduled in 2 weeks. Prepare your financial documents and come for a consultation. Everything is serious. The matter is moving toward divorce." He dialed her number to confirm that he understood everything. The lawyer explained that at the preliminary hearing the judge will listen to the parties and offer to try to resolve everything peacefully. Ron was going to agree to peacefully if Patty didn't make wild demands. Late that evening, as Ron was getting ready to go to bed, Patty knocked on his door. He sighed, "What else?" and allowed me to enter. She walked in, clutching the phone in her hands. "I don't think he'll calm down," she whispered. "Who?" "Brent. He sends messages that he will be back. Says that he can publish our sexy photos if I don't give him money." Ron felt a heaviness in his chest. "So apply for him, or at least threaten to do it." "What if he already posted something?" Patty seemed scared. "Children can see." Ron closed his eyes, trying not to get angry, and suggested, "Call the police, have them draw up a report on threats of blackmail. If he actually publishes something, you will have a reason to attract him. I have a dossier on him. We can use it." Patty nodded nervously. "Okay, I'll try. Sorry to bother you." "It's okay," said Ron. "I don't want him to harm you or the children. We will take action if necessary." For the first time in a long time, Patty looked at him with some kind of grateful expression. "Thank you for not leaving me completely." Ron just sighed heavily. He could not stand indifferently as the mother of his children fell under this type of threat. After all, Patty is an important part of his past. But alas, the past, which is now just a shadow. 2 weeks passed quickly. Ron was busy with business, trying not to interfere with Patty unless absolutely necessary. Lauren asked him to collect all bank statements, house documents, car insurance policies, everything needed for a divorce. Patty cooperated and handed over her income statements. On the eve of the hearing, Ron felt slightly jittery. He had never been a party to a lawsuit before. But meeting with Lauren, I understood that she was confidently handling the matter. The lawyer explained, "If Patty agrees to our project of division, everything will be decided in a couple of meetings." If there is a dispute, it will drag on. I don't think she'll challenge it. It's too dangerous for her to bring all this out in public, said Ron. Let's hope. Tomorrow at 10, I'm at the county courthouse. Don't be late, Lauren reminded. Ron nodded, signed the last papers, and headed home. On the way, I called Mia just to hear her voice, drawing support. She gently wished him good luck. Everything will go as it should. You can handle it. Her words affected him better than any sedative. The day of the hearing arrived. Ron, dressed in a formal suit, stood at the entrance to the district court. Next to her is Lauren Goodman, trim and collected. About 10 minutes later, a car pulled up and Patty came out in a modest dress, looking depressed. Ron noticed that she came without a lawyer, although he expected that she might hire a defense. They made eye contact. Patty averted her eyes and then still approached. Hello, I decided not to hire a lawyer. I want to resolve everything peacefully. Ron nodded silently. Lauren asked her, Are you sure you don't have a lawyer? If anything, the hearing may be postponed so that you can find protection. No, I agree to the terms, Patty answered quietly. I don't need to argue. I just need this to end quickly. Lauren shrugged. Okay, that even simplifies things. They entered the hall. The judge was a short man with a frowning look. Listened carefully to the brief gist. Ron filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. The wife's side does not deny the fact. The judge asked Patty, Mrs. Henderson, do you understand that you are waiving further legal protection? Yes, Your Honor, I understand everything. I want to get a peaceful divorce. The judge looked at Ron. Mr. Henderson, you provided documents confirming your wife's infidelity and a plan for the division of property. Given that there is no custody dispute and there are no minor children, we can resolve the issue quickly if the parties agree to sign an agreement. Do you both agree? Ron nodded. Yes, I agree. I am ready to give her part of my savings and leave the car. Home for yourself. Patty nodded too. Yes. The judge raised his eyebrows slightly, as if surprised that everything was so smooth. In that case, I will give you 2 weeks to sign the final agreement. If there are no objections, we will announce the divorce at the second meeting. Lauren confirmed, No objection, Your Honor. The judge wrote something down in the papers and declared the meeting closed, setting the next date in 2 weeks. Ron felt that a stone had been lifted from his soul. A little, it seemed like everything was coming to an end. Outside the court, Patty caught up with Ron. Thank you for not destroying me in the hall. I appreciated it. Ron lowered his eyes. I don't want to destroy you. I always wanted only truth and freedom. If you also want to move on, let everything pass calmly. She sobbed, nodded, and walked away. It was clear from her appearance that it was not easy for her, because she had been Mrs. Henderson all her life, and now she was facing a new reality. Ron looked after her without malice, only with quiet regret. Still, 30 years of marriage is no joke, but it was already impossible and pointless to stop the process. Lauren approached and said quietly, It looks like everything is going according to plan. Sign the agreement in a couple of weeks, you are officially free. Ron nodded wearily. Yes, thank you. She nodded and hurried to her car, and Ron stood for a few more minutes, looking at the tall courthouse. This is it, he thought, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. A couple of days after the hearing, everything seemed to calm down. Patty behaved evenly, trying not to run into a scandal. Brant did not appear, which raised hopes that he had left or found a new victim. The children called periodically, interested in the progress of the process. Ron told them that everything was moving towards a smooth divorce. He felt a pleasant emptiness inside, as if all the emotional storms had subsided. One evening, Ron was sitting in the living room, rearranging old photographs. Patty came in. I found a box with old photographs in the attic, she said, putting the box on the table. Ron nodded. Yes, thank you. He understood that she wanted to somehow establish contact, maybe remember the good things. And suddenly, he himself suggested, Sit down, let's take a look. They began to sort through photographs, joyful moments, the birth of daughters, holidays. All this was part of their common life. Patty sighed quietly. We were so happy. When did it all break? Ron looked down. The crack probably appeared a long time ago. And I found out about this when I heard your conversation with your lover. I know. I'm sorry, she repeated. I can say sorry endlessly, but nothing can be fixed. Ron closed the box. Yes, that's all for now. It's better to stop living in the past. In the end, we will maintain the relationship for the sake of the children, for the sake of the grandchildren. But as a couple, we are finished. Patty nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for at least not hating me. I don't think I could survive this. That night, Ron lay awake for a long time, turning over the memories in his mind. Their story began with romance, then there were years of work, caring for children, and everyday problems. At some point, they lost intimacy, and the result was her betrayal. Of course, the resentment remained in his soul, but he no longer burned with rage. He just wanted it to be over and for everyone to start a new chapter. Patty was also awake in the next room. She listened to the clock ticking and thought about how quickly she could lose everything that seemed eternal. But there is no turning back. She mentally asked for forgiveness from the children and herself. In the morning, Ron found a message from Mia. How are you? Maybe we can meet and take a walk. He realized that he missed her easy voice, her willingness to listen. He answered, Come on, after lunch in the park. And I felt a joyful thrill. Still, he reminded himself that the official divorce was still about 2 weeks away. That's why I didn't want to rush into a novel so as not to look just like Patty. But communicate, feel her support, why not? After lunch, Ron and Mia met in the same park where they had recently walked. This time Mia brought a blanket, a thermos of tea and cookies. They settled in a quiet corner on the grass, basking in the warm autumn sun. How do you feel before the final stage? She asked as Ron summarized the results of the trial. Feeling of relief. Of course, there is sadness, but I'm glad that everything is not descending into dirty squabbles. Mia listened attentively and then suggested, If you want, we can take a walk to the lake. I often go there when I need to clear my head. They walked along the path through the slightly yellowed trees. On the way, they discussed her plans. Mia dreamed of creating a separate zone in the studio for meditation, maybe even attracting investment from friends. Ron jokingly suggested, maybe you should become a business angel, to which she laughed cheerfully. Are you an angel? The further they walked, the more Ron felt a warm wave of tenderness for Mia rise within him. She didn't look like a girl looking for a rich daddy. No, there was sincerity in her gaze, in her words, sincere interest in his personality. He, accustomed to the role of an old husband, suddenly felt that he could be not just an ex-husband, but a man who was interesting to someone. Sitting at the edge of a small lake, they watched the sun's reflections play on the water. Mia asked, Aren't you afraid to start all over again? After all, after a divorce, many remain stuck in resentment. Ron shrugged. I'm scared, but I don't want to get stuck. I want to live. That's it. It may sound pretentious, but I feel like I've been given a second chance. Mia smiled quietly. I'm happy for you. And if you need support, I'm here. Just don't rush, right? I promise I won't rush into a new relationship until I end the old one. He looked into her eyes. Thank you, Mia. They sat next to each other, and Ron felt his hand involuntarily touch hers. There was silence for a second, but then Mia squeezed his hand, and he realized that this was more than just friendly support. A warm feeling enveloped his heart. On his way back, Ron accidentally ran into his neighbor, Harry, who had once given him the detective's contact. Harry was riding a bicycle, saw him and Mia, stopped. Oh, Ron, hello. Who's that with you? Slyly raised an eyebrow. Ron introduced Mia as a friend who was helping him with his health, but Harry seemed to think there was more to it than that. He winked. Glad to see you're not depressed. You look cheerful, old man. Ron felt a slight shame that people were already noticing how he was taking on a new lease of life. But Mia behaved calmly, smiled at Harry, and he, realizing that there was no point in asking questions, only said, "How's everything going with the divorce?" Ron answered briefly that he was finishing. Harry patted his friend on the shoulder. "Well done. I always said, the bitter truth is better than living in deception. Okay, I won't interfere. See you." Harry left, and Ron and Mia moved on. There was a slight awkwardness in the air, but also a drop of joy from the fact that he was no longer embarrassed to appear in public with her. A few days later, Ron was back in Lauren's office, signing the necessary paperwork for the final agreement. Patty was also present, silent and subdued. They laid out everything. The house goes to Ron, the car and part of the savings go to Patty. The judge will likely approve it at the next hearing if no one changes their mind. As Ron was about to leave, Lauren's secretary ran up to her. "There's someone there demanding to see Mr. Henderson, saying he's in danger." Ron frowned. "Danger? Who?" The woman shrugged. "Some kind of detective." Gene Craven, that same private detective, came out into the corridor. He seemed excited. "Mr. Henderson, I need to talk to you." They retired to the reception room. Craven said in a quick whisper, "I found out that your friend Brent has not left town. Moreover, he may be looking for a way to revenge you. A cop I know said he saw Brent snooping around about your yoga studio, some kind of Sanders. Does this mean anything to you?" Ron's heart sank. Sanders was Mia's last name. "The yoga studio is owned by Mia Sanders." "Damn," he breathed. "Yes, I have a friend named Sanders. Did he decide to get to me through her?" "Looks like it. Perhaps he wants to somehow scare or set her up in order to put pressure on you. Be careful. I recommend warning Miss Sanders to be on her guard." Ron clenched his fists, feeling a surge of rage. This guy won't take it anyway. "Thank you, Jen. I'll figure it out." That same day, Ron urgently called Mia. "Look, this might sound weird, but be careful. There is one guy, Brent, who is my, let's say, enemy. He may try to contact you or appear near your studio." Mia didn't immediately understand why she was so scared, but Ron briefly outlined the situation. The girl got scared. "But why me? I don't know him. I think he knows that we are communicating and wants to blackmail me through you. Please be careful. If you see someone suspicious, call the police." Mia thanked her for the warning. There were notes of anxiety in her voice, but also of determination. "I will not allow myself to be intimidated." A couple of days later, Mia wrote Ron an excited message. "A strange guy came by and was interested in your yoga schedule. I said that this is not where you study regularly. He started asking about you. I said I don't give out personal information." Ron knew immediately that it was Brant or his buddy. He called Mia. "Are you okay?" "Yes, he left, but he behaved impudently. Said something like, 'Tell Ron we'll talk later.' I then locked myself in the back room until he left." "Sorry for dragging you in," Ron managed. "This is all because of my divorce." Mia said softly, "Stop it, it's not your fault. I'll just be more careful, and you keep me posted." Ron then consulted with Craven and Lauren. They said that if Brent showed up again, they could safely call the police and present facts of blackmail, since Craven had been recorded making threats. Lauren promised to involve a prosecutor she knows if necessary. Ron himself felt, it's time to call it a day. There was a week left before the final hearing, and he decided that after the divorce trial, he would finally erase Patty and her problems with her lovers from his life. In the meantime, we need to ensure Mia's safety and our peace of mind. In the evening, Ron approached Patty, who was sitting in the kitchen, leafing through some kind of recipe book, apparently just to keep herself busy. He said directly, "Your ex-lover is getting into trouble again. He is already harassing someone close to me. Don't know what he needs." Patty threw up her hands in confusion. "He still wants money. He thinks that if I don't give, then you will, since you have more. There's nothing I can do. I just blocked his number yesterday, but he will find other ways to contact me." Ron gritted his teeth. "Wonderful. Okay, don't you dare help him with a penny. If he appears, immediately inform me or the police." Patty nodded and said quietly, "Sorry. Really? I didn't think it would turn out like this." Ron just sighed. It's too late to think. He went to his room, burning with the desire to end this divorce and leave all the problems behind. The day of the final meeting arrived. Ron and Patty were in court, Lauren with them. The judge once again clarified that the parties agreed to the proposed version of the agreement. Patty nodded and Ron confirmed. Then the judge solemnly said, "Subject to the consent of both parties and the absence of objection, the marriage of Mr. Ronald Henderson and Mrs. Patricia Henderson is dissolved. Congratulations on your civilized decision. Best wishes." The words, "marriage is dissolved," sounded unexpectedly casual. Ron stood there, feeling like an invisible thread was breaking inside him. That was it. 30 years of marriage are officially over. Lauren shook his hand. "Congratulations on your freedom. I hope everything goes well for you." Patty walked out silently, tears streaming down her face. Ron didn't approach her, giving her the opportunity to accept reality. However, on the steps outside the courthouse, Patty caught up with him. "Ron," she stopped, wiping away tears. "I'm sorry it's like that. I lost not only my husband, but also my friend." Ron looked into her reddened eyes. "I'm sorry we couldn't save everything. But we are not enemies. We will communicate occasionally for the sake of our children and grandchildren. And then everyone has their own path." Patty involuntarily leaned forward as if she wanted to hug, but Ron took a step back. "Sorry," she breathed. "Habit. Okay, good luck to you, Ron." He nodded. "And you too. Goodbye, Patty." She turned around and walked towards the car. Ron watched her go. No euphoria, but no rage either. Just emptiness and quiet relief. The end, he thought. In the evening, Ron called Mia and said that everything was over. The marriage was officially dissolved. Mia suggested celebrating this in a symbolic format. "Let's just have tea in my studio after closing." He arrived at her studio when it got dark. The building was already closed to customers, but soft lights were on. Mia greeted him with a warm smile and placed the brewed herbal tea on a small table. "Well, congratulations on the beginning of a new chapter," she said, raising her cup. "How do you feel?" Ron sighed. "Mixed feelings. But the main thing is that I no longer feel like I am being held in a cage of lies. I'm free, yes." Mia gently touched his shoulder. "I'm happy for you. Let this be the first day of your new life." Ron smiled, feeling his heart beat faster. For a moment their gazes met, and it seemed that all words became unnecessary. He decided to gently press himself against her, and Mia returned the hug, clinging to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not letting me fall apart." "I was just there," she answered quietly, snuggling closer. They stood like that in a dimly lit room among yoga mats and fragrant candles, quietly feeling each other's warmth. Ron realized, yes, he is almost 60, but his life is not over. He can still feel love and be needed. That evening, they talked for a long time about the future. Mia said that she does not expect instant confessions from him or to move in with her, but she hinted that she was ready for a closer relationship when Ron himself was ready for it. For Ron, it was both exciting and a little scary, but he felt grateful to fate that such a woman was nearby during a dark period of his life. Fortunately for them, neither Brant nor any other problems interfered with these quiet evening hours. Ron thought that he might soon have to deal with the gigolo's antics again, but now he was mentally prepared, and so was Mia. If a threat arises, they will find a solution together. As he left the studio, Ron found himself thinking that he no longer considered himself an old fart. He has a future, and it starts today. And deep down in his heart, he repeated, albeit with a bitter smile, "Thank you, Patty, for pushing me to make these changes." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.